The Auburn Tigers. Let's do a quick state of the union. I want to talk about where this program is. If you're an individual who roots for Auburn and you're an Auburn fan, after what happened against Cal at home at Jordan Hare Stadium Saturday, you can't help but be dismayed. You're probably a little bit upset. And I understand why you're upset. Because the whole story on Auburn, now remember, I'm not going to necessarily say this is a referendum on anybody. I just want to make clear what's happening on the plains right now. You beat Alabama A&M 63 to whatever. And there are a lot of people that are excited about that. There's nothing wrong with getting a win. There's nothing wrong with getting excited about a win. However, I think you should always consider the competition. You should always consider the circumstances because there's always context involved. This is an Auburn team that is in position to do some great things, possibly in the next 2 or 3 years. This is not me making excuses for Auburn. This is me telling you exactly what the state of their program is. Remember, the one thing that you can say about the Auburn Tigers in recent memory, I think, is that they've been consistently inconsistent. You can look at the litany of coaches that they've had. Look at the amount of coaches that they're still paying via buyout clauses. This is where Auburn's program is. I always talk about programs that are destination spots. Now, what makes a destination program? Could it be the coaching? Yep. Could it be the culture? Yep. Could it be the location? Absolutely. Could it be the other recruits that are going there? Absolutely. Could it be the academic prowess? Could it be the landscape of the students there? Could it be all of those factors? The answer is yes. But there are some programs that can be cultivated to become destination spots in addition to having some of those viable options that they're already in place. And if you're Auburn, I think it's okay to say that Auburn may not necessarily be a destination spot as of yet. Payne Thorne. I'm going to start there because that's where everybody wants to start. You bring in a quarterback from the Big Ten who's now been in your system for his second year. And in the second game of the season, after looking phenomenal, again, I'll say against Alabama A&M, throws 4 interceptions in a game that you lose by 1 touchdown at home. This is the one thing that Auburn doesn't have in my estimation that a lot of other programs that are top tier, that may be destination programs, have currently, and that's a large or a wide margin of error. If you don't have a wide margin of error, 1 or 2 turnovers may kill you, not to mention 4. And when you lay it at the feet of Payton Thorne, because all of those turnovers, those 4 interceptions, or what really drove the stake home against Auburn, you have to kind of reevaluate where you are as a program. Everybody that I've talked to, everybody that I know that may be close to this program, except a couple, are looking at this Auburn team and saying, man, they've done such a great job recruiting under Hugh Freeze. That's true. I'm not going to make any bones about that. And they feel like because Payton Thorne now has the requisite weapons around him, that everything will be fine. And I'll just ask you this question. At some point in time, when you change the environment around an individual, does that environment change the individual, or does the individual still stay that same person even in the new environment? That's just a question I'll pose. Because if you're looking at Payton Thorne, I think personally he's still Payton Thorne. He's just in a new environment. He's still Payton Thorne with better weapons. He's still Payton Thorne who still hasn't been able to get the job done. I can't foresee the future. Can he have a great rest of the season? The season's not over for Auburn. You lose a non-conference game, albeit at home. It doesn't indicate that nothing else will go well for you throughout the duration of 2024. What I'm telling you is Payton Thorne is who he is. I'll make the comparison to Kirk Cousins in the NFL. Did you watch the Falcons this past weekend? Kirk Cousins is who he is, even though he's got a plethora of opportunities in terms of running backs, receivers, and in the Falcons' case, he's got one of the best offensive lines in football. What Hugh Freeze has to be able to do is make sure that Payton Thorne is able to put that game behind him. Because if you're a program that's trying to build any type of culture to sustain any type of greatness on a consistent basis, short-term memory has to be at play. And it's not just short-term memory when you lose, it's short-term memory when you win as well. So I'm not sitting here saying that Auburn was feeling themselves after beating Alabama A&M. I don't know that. I haven't talked to the players. I haven't talked to the coaches. What I do know is the psychology of any individual is going to lead to his or her demise or his or her trajectory when it comes to being great, when it comes to doing things that you're expected to do or things that you want to do, especially in the context as a football program. There's not many X's and O's conversation that I think you need to have about Auburn at this point in time. I think the Auburn Tigers are a program that has solidified the opportunity to recruit talent, and I think they've also solidified that they're a program that hasn't necessarily been able to develop and build that talent over the previous 5 or 6 seasons. which is why this is a program that hasn't seen itself eclipse 6 wins in the past 4 years. But I will preach patience when it comes to the Auburn Tigers. I will tell you that even in the midst of this adversity, you have to allow themselves to show who they are. Because I've always said that adversity is going to be a predictor of whether somebody's great or whether somebody's average. But you can't see them necessarily just in the adversity. You have to see how the adversity either shapes them or breaks them. Auburn has an opportunity moving forward to allow this adversity to shape them. There is an upside to adversity. It's a book by O.S. Hillman. If you've never read it, I think you go read it. Shout out to O.S. right there. There's an opportunity for Auburn to grow from this. But it can't start without Peyton Thorne. It can't start without the people in that program believing in him. You've still got a plethora of talent, albeit young. And if Peyton Thorne isn't the answer may lie in somebody they have on the sidelines right now or in a recruit they haven't yet recruited yet. All I'm saying is Auburn is not bereft of talent. At this point in time, they may simply be bereft of culture. Championship medal matters. Why do you think there are programs like Georgia, like Ohio State, that when they get down or when they suffer setbacks, or even Alabama, especially under Nick Saban, because we don't have a lot on Kalen DeBoer in Tuscaloosa as of yet, it helps build your resilience. And we don't know what people on Auburn have that. You've got transfers who can play ball. You've got incoming freshmen that can play ball. You've got coaches that know what they're doing, who understand the landscape of the SEC, who understand how to coach college football. But coming together as a cohesive unit matters. And I'm going to tell you something about this, too. When it comes to the transfer portal, I've said this before, and I want to reiterate it. It very, very much so helps a multitude of programs, not just programs that are trying to compete with Power 4 programs, but Power 4 programs as well, like Auburn. They were able to fill out their roster in addition to the recruits that they had, a top 10 recruiting class, with guys like Keandre Lambert-Smith from Penn State, with guys like Trill Carter from Texas. These guys are going to help this program. But you have to sustain a culture of excellence and a culture of resiliency because you don't know how everybody will gel. It's early on in the season. If you're the Auburn Tigers, you have to understand that we have to make adjustments. Whether it's X and O's, whether it's route running, whether it's route combinations. Defensively, Auburn looked good. Auburn didn't look terrible. And I think that's something you have to hang your hat on, but you also have to put yourself in the mindset and have the perspective of, are we a program that's going to continue to be inconsistent, or are we going to take the next step? Because Cal is a good barometer in non-conference. Put Cal in the SEC, I think they may be the 9th or 10th best team in the conference. So moving forward, you have to understand what the conference schedule is going to look like for the Auburn Tigers. Now, I said this before the season even started. You get 7, 8 wins as an Auburn program, you should be thrilled. You should be excited. If you're a national championship-minded individual that thinks that's where Auburn's headed right now, I don't think you're being realistic. And I'm an individual that thinks being unrealistic is a great thing. But regarding this program, understanding that 7, 8 wins might be the bar that you need to be shooting for right now. Anything over that is cherry on top. Make sure that moving forward, you're able to take care of the football. Because, see, this is not just about a game. This is about a program. This is about an institution. There are good teams in college football, and there are good programs. There are great teams in college football, and then there are great programs. Being a good team or a great team doesn't make you a good program or a great program. Teams come and go year to year. Programs are established over a great amount of time or a sustained amount of time. And if you're Auburn, that's where you're trying to be. Now let's talk about the Alabama Crimson Tide as well. Same scenario. Kalen DeBoer comes in. Jalen Milroe is your starting quarterback. Alabama struggles against South Florida. And if you're upset about this, I just want to remind you that if we rewind to a year ago when Nick Saban's the head coach, when Alabama comes off the loss against Texas, what happens against South Florida? They struggle against South Florida on the road. I understand that that's when Jalen Milroe was benched and Nick Saban was trying to figure out who his starter was, although in my estimation, it was always Milroe, even though he played a poor game against Texas. That team has shown itself to be a top-tier program by what they did last year and what they're doing thus far under Steve Sarkisian coming into the 24 season. But what did Alabama do? I was at the house, and I said Alabama's about to pull away from this game and from this team in the fourth quarter because they're just that much more talented. See, this is what I'm telling you guys. Everybody wants college football to be a blowout for teams that are Power 4 teams and that are ranked in the top 25 against an unranked team or a team that's not in the Power 4, especially an FCS opponent. They want blowouts. And what I'm telling you is, would Notre Dame have appreciated a win against Northern Illinois? Yeah. Would Iowa have appreciated a win against Iowa State? Yeah. Would the aforementioned Auburn Tigers, would they have appreciated a win against Cal at home this past Saturday? Yeah. So Alabama is able to get the win against South Florida, but they're still going to get vitriol because they're Alabama. And I don't mind that from people if you're saying that Alabama has a high standard. What I will tell you is that you have to understand that winning close games in college football is not a bad thing. Not being at your best and still winning football games is not a bad thing. I'd rather learn a lesson in a win than learn a lesson in a loss. And I think that's where development and that's where sustainability and understanding what makes phenomenal programs, I think that's the foundation. Because in a game like this is when you tell your team, hey, we weren't at our best. We know we have an opportunity to get better. It's different if Alabama and Kalen DeBoer and his coaching staff go in after the win against South Florida, even though it was a 3-touchdown, 4-touchdown victory. You know the game was closer than the final score indicated. So if you were to go in and say, hey, we got the win, nothing else matters, let's move on to next week, then that is a culture problem, even in the midst of winning. But even in the midst of winning, if Kalen DeBoer is addressing his coaching staff and addressing himself and looking in the mirror and addressing this Alabama team and saying, hey, we got the win, but there's so much more we need to do to get better. This is not who we are as a program. This is not the standard that I'm setting, regardless of what happened in years prior. It doesn't matter what happened at Alabama prior to Kalen DeBoer in his mind, and it shouldn't matter. And I think that's what makes him a good coach. That's what makes him somebody that was desirable to the Alabama faithful in the first place. Not just that he won at Washington, but he's somebody willing to come into a program that has national championship aspirations every single year. Understanding that no matter what the score is, we have to develop and we have to get better. That's who he is. So I'm looking at the state of Alabama and the state of Auburn in terms of their programs. You have one in Alabama that is a good, that is a great, and a sustainable and viable program, and Auburn is looking to become a good team. Don't try to skip the process. It's not going to happen for you that way.